Hello and welcome to another episode of the Manufacturing Leaders Podcast with me, Mark Bracknell, Managing Director of Theo James Recruitment. Today we welcomed on Jonathan Hamill onto the show. Jonathan is the Managing Director of GreCon, and this was what I was looking forward to because I knew it was going to be a back to basics almost of the Manufacturing Leaders Podcast of just pure management styles. Jonathan is an ex-policeman, worked in the industry for a while before moving into engineering and manufacturing. So we talked about those transferable skills. We talked about managing people, having to make those difficult decisions, but ultimately the type of mindset and the type of style you need to be and do as a leader to make such decisions and actually be a respected leader. We talk about retention. He had some amazing advice on training your staff and the importance of that and empowering people within the organization, and you're going to take quite a lot away from that. And the whole thing about concentrating on culture and attrition and having attrition as a KPI in the business, which ultimately should mean that recruitment should help take care of itself. And then we talk about manufacturing as a whole, the challenges, the opportunities. As I say, this was a real sort of, if you like, old school manufacturing leaders type episode I thoroughly enjoyed. So please sit back, enjoy the episode. As ever, please do me the honour of liking and subscribing to the channel, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Thank you. Brilliant. So a massive warm welcome this morning to Jonathan Hamill, the MD of GreCon. How are you, Jonathan? All right?
I'm very well, thank you.
Yes, well, really looking forward to going through your fascinating journey, and it's looking forward to a proper management style manufacturing leaders episode. So great stuff. So the same question to you is the first one I ask everyone comes on the show. What does it mean to you to be a leader?
Yeah, so I think leadership, first of all, it's a tremendous responsibility. I think for me, it's about creating a supportive and enabling environment so that people, whether it's individuals or teams, can achieve the highest possible results. That's it in a sentence. If I was to go on from that, I think I could also say that leadership isn't about a popularity contest. I think it's okay to be popular, but that shouldn't be your prime goal as a leader. I think there are other things that are much more important to me. That's about being credible, being visible, being dependable, and when needed to challenge unwanted or toxic behaviors in the workplace. And I think, from that, it's about a responsibility to the whole organization, which means that sometimes you've got to make tough decisions, which maybe links back to it's not a popularity contest. I think, sorry.
Oh, go on, mate, as you were, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say that, I mean, back in my early days, I used to think that leadership was just about being visible and helping people to achieve things and motivating them to do that. But I think I realized throughout my journey that it's much, much more, and I can share some of that with you if you want.
Yeah, it's fascinating actually, because that popularity contest thing, I think a lot of people struggle with it. I struggle with it, still do at times, because there's that natural emotion of we want to be liked and want it to be appreciated, but it is very different when you're leading someone, because that doesn't always lead you to the best decision for you or the staff, does it?
Yeah, I think it's a byproduct rather than it's not the most important thing for me. I mean, as I say, it's great if people like you and you're popular, then that helps. But I don't think it can be. You shouldn't be a leader because you want to be popular. That's kind of the thing for me. It's good if you achieve that on the way,
Yeah.
but it shouldn't be the be all and end all. Yeah, I think yeah.
Did you always want it to be a leader? Was that something that progressed, or was that always in your mind?
I think I've always been quite fascinated about people. I've always been fascinated about the link between leadership and motivation. Um, it goes back to it goes back to my childhood. When I was a young boy growing up in the north of Ireland, my father was a senior officer in the military. It was an organisation called the Ulster Defence Regiment that became the Royal Irish Regiment, and I had a tremendous opportunity when I was a boy. So I used to spend a lot of time in military camps learning how to drive cars on airfields, to shoot weapons, to strip weapons, to spend time in a very unusual environment. And in all of the interactions that I had with people, they used to say things to me that gave me an impression that my father was a good leader. And I often sort of found that there was a lot of respect for him. And I tried to understand what did that mean and how could he motivate people to do dangerous things, because it was a dangerous job in that environment. And when I talked to people, I realized that, he was visible. He didn't ask people to do things that he wasn't prepared to do himself. And critically for me, because I used to go with him, I used to go on these walkarounds and talk to people and realized that one of the simplest things he did was just to spend time listening to people about their challenges and to sort of understand what he could do to help and how he could make their working environment better. And that's the whole ethos of this enabling and supportive environment. So I suppose I was like a sponge then, and maybe I didn't realize that I was learning how to be a leader. But if I reflect back now, that was my kind of formative time, my window into leadership, albeit in a very unusual context.
Did you ever consider going down that route on the military side? Was that part of the path?
I think I think I did. I mean, I did have a brief foray into the military world, but I spent more time policing. And I think, as I grew up, I had my father in the military, I had other family members in policing, and I always had sort of a high moral compass, and I wanted to find something to where I could help people and to play a role. So I guess my avenue took me into policing.
How hard was that when I imagine you've had poor managers. Everyone's had good and bad managers. How hard was that being managed at times by someone who perhaps didn't have the same values or the same empathy or listening that your father had and obviously were ingrained in you?
Yeah, it's been difficult for me where I've had poor managers. I think it's been difficult where I've had poor managers or poor leaders who weren't prepared to challenge the wrong types of behaviors in the workplace. So it's often made me feel that I need to stand up and need to make a stand and I need to challenge upwards sometimes as well. So it's yeah, where I've had poor leaders, poor managers, that's been challenging. But I've also really appreciated the opportunities where I've had strong leaders, role models, people that I can learn from, identify with. That's also very important.
In terms of routes into management, there's different routes. There's people in manufacturing could have served a time on the shop floor and worked their way up. Other people might have come through the university route, and obviously on the academic side. What would you say? What would you put it down to? Your sort of managerial capabilities now? Is it more learning on the job, or is it the training piece? Would you say that you've had along the way?
I think it's both. So if I look at my again go back to my sort of teenage years or whatever, I was always the guy looking to take responsibility for things. I was one of the I think I was one of the youngest canoeing instructors in the north of Ireland at the time. I was a scout leader when I was a teenager. I think I've always looked for those kind of leadership responsible sort of positions throughout my life. And I think in a work context, um, it's a blend of yes, I've done some learning in the classroom or academic learning, but I've also developed, a wide range of experiences through policing and through the transition from that law enforcement career into the commercial world and the roles and the responsibilities that I've had there, which ultimately have taken me to, exciting challenges such as I led a global business in a government and public safety sector for one business.
How challenging was that coming from the policing world into a completely new industry? Did you find the skills were more transferable than you thought they would be, or was that a challenge going into civic world and being quite a different exposure?
I think there's a big set of transferable skills if you can realize how to transfer them and which skills are appropriate to transfer. Ultimately, I think it's about people. Um, if I look at the challenge that I have in a work environment today, there are at least two groups of people that are very, very important. You've got to focus on your customer group, and you've got to focus on delivering excellent customer service. Of course, you have to. Um, then you've got to focus on the internal group of people, so your employees, and they're also a hugely important group of people. And I think, my experience, my skill set moving from law enforcement to the commercial world, it allowed me to bring those sort of people skills across into a commercial setting. And I think that that's been hugely valuable.
Yeah. What sort of first attracted you to manufacturing engineering? Was that something that just an opportunity that you saw, or did you fall into it?
Yeah, so again, I've had a little bit of a wavy path to my career. So again, I've got to go back to the early days. So when I was a child, my grandfather had a coach building business. So I guess you can call that manufacturing. And I spent many happy days as a child learning, I would call it basic skills, trade skills, engineering skills with him in his workshop. So I think when I was a boy at school, I always wanted to understand how things work. I wanted to reverse engineer everything. Um, I went on to study electrical and electronic engineering, and I did at that early stage also want to join the police, but back then, policing in the north of Ireland was a challenging task. And I remember that the desk sergeant at the local police station said to me, I think you need to go and get some life experience and come back a little bit later. So that allowed me to experiment in electrical, electronic engineering roles and customer service roles at an early stage. And once I had a couple of years life experience, I then went to policing. And the only difference is I went to the north of England because I think my family at the time said, "Well, that's a little bit safer than being at home."
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so that was sort of how I got into policing, and then in policing, I was involved in some IT modernization projects, and because of my technical sort of interest in these things, I took a career break. I was supported by the force to do that because I was interested in accelerated promotion, and they said, if you go on this career break, you'll develop certain skills that will be very useful to advance your career in policing. That was the plan. I ended up going to work for a large company that was a key supplier to policing customers. And through a series of promotions over the years, and ultimately ended up running this global business for them, the path back to policing became more of a challenge. My life had moved on, and I really enjoyed the challenge that I learned and developed then in the commercial world.
What I know you've held some really important positions across a couple of key companies there. What's always excited you, would you say, in terms of the types of challenges or where a company is at a certain time that you really feel now your skills sort of hone into? I appreciate that's an interview question, but I just think it's quite interesting to understand the character there.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a simple answer. It's always about growth. Um, if I look at that company that I joined from policing, they were in growth mode, and that excited me. I left that company because I wanted to spend less time on airplanes traveling around the world. I was worried that I would miss out on my children growing up, so I looked for a company closer to home in Durham. Um, I actually got a call from Fagus GreCon, and I said, "What do I know about fire prevention, spark detection, measuring technology in industrial environments?" Somehow the discussions continued, and here I am today. Um, but that was also a growth opportunity, and it's been a very enjoyable and motivational journey until where I am today.
And I think most company owners want to grow. I think if you asked
Yeah,
100 company owners what do I do, probably at least 90% will probably say, I want to grow. But it's hard. Do you know what I mean? It's not a case of, to double turnover or to double headcount or whatever the lever is you're trying to pull there. What do you think would you say the main pitfalls that companies perhaps don't appreciate when they're trying to go from A to B in that respect?
I think you've got to be conscious about how you want to achieve growth. So I think you really have to set out a plan.
Mhm.
So, when I joined GreCon Limited, the company had already been in existence in the UK for close to a quarter of a century, but it wasn't in a growth mode in the UK. And so what I needed to do there was to help people understand that, first of all, it was appropriate, right, and good to grow, and also that we had a vision for growth, and then that we had to set waypoints so that we could aim for something and chart success along that journey. So I think you've got to have a very deliberate and very focused and very conscious approach to growth, and you've got to then examine all of the sort of facets or tenets of the business environment where you need to have plans and support in place. Again, it comes back a lot to people. You need the right people, and you need to focus on developing them and enabling them to perform at a high level.
Because growth is exciting for some people, but it's scary for other people. Whenever there's an acquisition or any form of change where you're going to get a level of resistance, aren't you? Which I guess is in a role like you're doing quite tricky to try and manage, presumably. But you mentioned that vision, didn't you? It's that is so crucial, but that's not just a case of putting it on paper. That's tricky to get sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's about this sort of visionary leadership role. I think in some organizations, people like the status quo. They like the let's keep doing what we do because that's safe and that doesn't create challenge or risk. But I think if the organization wants to embrace growth, I think it's about the leader or the leaders in that organization setting out what growth looks like, trying to motivate and excite people about the opportunity and bring them on the journey with you.
Yeah, 100%. And I think and that is a real skill on the management piece. And I mean quite interesting sort of management styles. You've already sort of alluded to this, but what do you think are the most important management skills that you've acquired or you've always tried to work towards that have sort of helped enable people to grow or whatever they'll be? Because I think it's a missing piece for a lot of companies.
So I think there's a couple of things there. I think throughout my career, I've moved away from this concept of a leader just must be visible and present and at the front to what I would call situational leadership. So as I've matured and as I've grown as a leader and as a person, I've realized that situational leadership is super important, where you need to be aware of the surroundings, aware of the environment, aware of the people and their needs. And that allows you to take account of what style of leadership you need to do. Do you need to be more encouraging, more coaching? Can you delegate more? Can you be more directive? And situational leadership then for me becomes a big thing. Um, in terms of my style of management, I'm a very open person. I believe in delegating because, again, in growth mode, you can't do everything on your own. You shouldn't do everything on your own. So you need to have an effective means to delegate and to let people take responsibility to do certain things. And the combination of all of those efforts creates a greater output as well.
What advice should you have for because I think you get a lot of manufacturing, you get a lot of not manufacturing, a lot of companies just in general who are um, they just promote people to managers because they're good engineers for it as an example, and there's no necessarily management training per se, and that can lead to I think to typically poor management, and I think there's a lot of companies in that boat. What advice would you have for companies who seem to have that culture where they need to work on their management team? Would you say?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. So I think that seniority in any organization can lead people to promotion. And I've certainly seen that where people are promoted to roles where they don't have the skill set or haven't been able to develop the skill set to be effective in management, for example. So one of the things that we do within our group is that we have a defined management program where we train leaders and managers. So we've invested in a provider who comes in and helps and delivers regular training, which supports that person that might come from an engineering role into a team leadership role or a management role, and that support is there. I think beyond that, um, in my organization and in the wider group where I also play some supportive roles, I think it's also about finding mentors in your organization and formalizing that cohort of mentors. So there are people who can help others become better managers, better leaders. And this is outside of a formal training, but I think, to create that mentor buddy type scheme is super important as well.
I absolutely love that. It's because I still think that there's been so many conversations last 18 months about retention and recruitment and how to and all this stuff. And I think a lot of companies are looking all the wrong places because you've got to look internally. You've got to fix your retention before you can even consider, in my opinion, looking at your recruitment. And something like staff training is it's just an absolute no-brainer because people don't have to. Progression is quite subjective, and I think for a lot of people, just having that learning development on hand in house is progression. Doesn't necessarily have to be a job title. Have you seen that have a direct correlation between staff happiness, retention, or anything you're looking at there?
I think training is something that is vitally important both to the organization and to people. And I think, because we invest in training, we're a very people-oriented organization in Fagus GreCon globally. So I think we're renowned for and we're known for investing in people and helping them to develop their professional skill set and develop as people. So I think I can see nearly every day that I come to work where people have been able to develop as a result of that investment in them as individuals and in a formal training program and also in an ad hoc mentoring capacity as well.
Apologies for interrupting this podcast for a very quick 30-second pitch of my business. Theo James are a specialist manufacturing and engineering recruitment search firm based in Seaham in the Northeast. If you're looking for any staff or a new opportunity yourself, from a semi-skilled level right the way up to C-suite executive, then please get in touch. We have a specialist consultant in each discipline ready to help. I'm extremely proud of what we've built over the years, and I'd love to extend that service out to you. Thank you. Enjoy the podcast. And how, I know I can't say exact, but everything, is at a cost, but I don't imagine that cost is unbelievably high in comparison to other business costs in relation to what you get back of it. How costly has that been in comparison, we say?
I don't think sometimes it's even appropriate to look at it as a cost. I think the alternative is that if you don't invest in training your people, you have an opportunity cost through not doing it.
Yeah.
That would be my counter. I think it's absolutely vital to invest in training people. You needn't, you needn't spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds necessarily to do that. It needs to be an appropriate investment given where you are as a company and what your budgets are. But to make some conscious investment is a good thing.
Yeah, I love that. I completely agree. And I think that mentorship piece is brilliant, Jonathan, because that just empowers people to really it's the best way to learn, isn't it? If you ultimately gonna train someone else, you're gonna learn it yourself before you do that.
Yeah, and I think, mentorship goes beyond just the person who's on that journey into their first management position, leadership position. I need mentored. I need a peer network. I have a lot of experience in leadership roles, but I don't exclude myself from that need. And I think that's one of the reasons why, leadership roles, management roles can be very lonely places. You have to have a supportive network to enable yourself to grow and to develop as well. And so one of the things that I do is, and I would advocate this to others, there's a team of three of us. We studied our masters at Durham Business School. We meet quite regularly. We're each in responsible leadership positions in different companies, and we meet up and we exchange challenges. We talk about things. We support each other, and that's been a very, very useful thing over the years. And beyond that, I've always had let's say a non-exec type side to what I do. So I've supported charities. I've sat in their boards. I recently was appointed as governor at New College in Durham, and that exposes me to other like-minded leaders and people who it establishes a peer network which helps you beyond being a governor in a college environment. I have access to a network of people that I can help them, they can help me, and we can achieve something good together. So I think I think you should always try and develop that supportive peer network. That's hugely valuable.
Yeah. You know what? Sometimes it's just good to know that people have the same challenges as you do. Sometimes
Yep.
that sanity check, because it's such a lonely place, being the person in the organization that needs to have all the answers, isn't it? It's hard at times.
Yeah, it's a tough place, and you got to make tough decisions. And I've made tough decisions over the years. You know, you need support. You need support. Also, I need support from my family. You know, it's not only about the workplace. So you that's the other piece of advice that I would give, and probably the reason that I'm in the organization that I am today. You know, I realized that traveling around the world, um, perhaps it's okay when you're young and you don't have a family there. I've got three children and a wife that would hopefully like to see something of me in the evenings and weekends. And I think that support that I get from them is also hugely important.
Yeah.
And you need to make time for that. So that's my other piece of advice is make time for you, make time for your family as well.
Has that always been a non-negotiable for you? Because some people, it changes throughout their career, but for you, has that always been a non-negotiable to make sure that work-life balance is there, or something you've learned?
You know, if I'm honest, I've probably not got it right at certain times. The balance has shifted massively in favor of work. And it's tough because I like growth. I like to achieve. I'm a high performer, but I think I've learned to address the balance more effectively over time. I think perhaps it was easier when I was a younger man without children to switch more into that sort of work mode.
Yeah.
I think now I've realized that the balance is important, and yeah, being present at home is important as well as being present and visible in the workplace. So it is all about balance.
We've already alluded to it a little bit in terms of the training piece and how that has helped the culture of the business. I'm fascinated by retention. I'm much more passionate about retention. I shouldn't be being a recruitment owner, but I am. I just think I'm people led. So I think it's really important for companies to hear and talk about.
Yeah.
Is that something you've concentrated on as a business over this, particularly this tricky time where everyone's
It's
going through it?
yeah, it's a KPI.
Okay.
For us, retention or the attrition rate is something we focus on fairly regularly. You know, as a group, our culture is about people and it's about retention, long-term commitment. That's how we operate best. I think it's fair to say that I mean we're a fifth generation family-owned German group of companies, and perhaps the cultural difference between Germany and the UK is notable. In the UK, typically there's in engineering roles, for example, there's a high turnover. People tend to move between organizations to advance their careers. But if we're honest, sometimes it's not only moving to advance your career, it's moving because something's not right. So I tend to look at I have two sets of factors that I tend to look at and consider to try and get the recipe right to promote retention. And I think, you know, there are what I call hygiene factors. So you've got to get the basics right. So um, I'm talking about the basics of get the salary right, get the package right, get the policies right. So make sure you've developed policies that people can understand and buy into. Make sure the working conditions are right. So those are all the kind of hygiene factors that I think we've got to focus on, or some of them. And I think then there are what I call motivating factors. So how do you address recognition? How do you address responsibility? And how do you address recognizing achievement? And I think if you can get some focus on these topics, you can create a series of motivating factors that have a positive impact on retention. Aside from retention, of course, you have to recruit people as well, and you need to bring new skills, new people, new perspectives into the business. And of course, we've done that too.
Yeah, great. And I think, but you're doing things that in the right order, which is the most important thing. So I think that's genuine. And that recognition piece, it is so important. And people say it's the new generation what recognize more than this and that, and maybe they do, but I don't think it's a generation thing. I think everyone should be recognized. I just don't think it was ever as paramount within the workplace as it perhaps was now. I think the new generation just maybe tar with the brush they need it, but I
Yeah,
think everyone should.
I think it's about it's about building a culture and an organization that fosters inclusivity. I think that's one of the things that will have a massive impact, I believe, on retention. I mean, I alluded to having to make tough decisions. I've encountered all sorts of bias and prejudice in the workplace. And as a leader, you can take two courses of action. You can ignore them, tolerate them, and that's where I see weak leadership, or you can confront and challenge them. So, I mean, I've dealt with racist, homophobic, and other sort of prejudices, and in some cases, I've had to ask people to leave because that's better for the wider organization. And through doing things like that, that's where you build this culture of inclusivity and you help people identify and belong and feel able and comfortable to commit for the long term.
Excellent. I love that. Manufacturing it's probably been through more ups and downs in the last 5-6 years than it has done for a long time before that. In terms of the challenges in manufacturing and the opportunities, what do you see as the biggest issues that the industry faces right now? Would you say that might be regional, that might be as an industry, but what are you seeing now?
So with the context, so we're an engineering company, our engineering-led company. We're about keeping people and places safer with fire prevention systems and helping companies with manufacturing responsibilities to realize product efficiency or product reliability and to manufacture efficiently with our measuring technology. So I think that gives us a great sort of breadth of view into the markets. I think the challenge that we have, and probably a lot of our customers have, it might be similar in some respects. We've got the effect of Brexit. That's still lingering on. It's still providing challenges. A simple example, we hold a lot of stock in the UK for our customers so we can be a fast responder. We're talking about mission critical fire prevention systems, so you can't wait. Before Brexit, we could have probably got that missing part within an overnight express delivery. That's simply not possible anymore. That has a massive impact on manufacturing companies that really need a critical part in a hurry. Of course, there's a lot of red tape, a lot of bureaucracy as well. And I think aside from Brexit, one of the other challenges is this, what I call the post-pandemic resettlement effect. So I think every organization is struggling to an extent with this. So, you know, a couple of years on, we're still trying to get it right in terms of what does flexible working mean? What does remote working mean? Is it appropriate for an organization to embrace this sort of hybrid type model? You know, there's no one answer for everybody, but that's a challenge because the expectation of your employees or your workforce is for a different sort of set of engagement than it would have been before the pandemic. That's another thing. I think another major challenge, I think, for manufacturing businesses must be global conflict and the impact that it has on the supply chain. I mean, we've seen fairly astronomical component and material price increases across the board. We've also seen delays. We've seen the non-availability of materials and parts, and a lot of this can also be down to the global conflict challenge, and that's a big challenge as well. I guess the opportunity comes out of some of that stuff that I think businesses and manufacturing companies that we engage with, we see a desire to be more effective, more efficient, to use resources more efficiently and across manufacturing and in sectors like recycling. These are key markets for us and places that we can play and make a big contribution. So that's also an opportunity for us all.
Yeah, 100%. One thing you mentioned there, which was interesting, was the hybrid and the work from home. Completely agree with you. It's still difficult to navigate around. When I was looking at your LinkedIn earlier, and I'd never seen anyone sort of sell themselves, and I think it's brilliant. The fact you said you experienced leading virtual teams, which is now a real modern day skill, because I would argue it's hardest way to manage people is virtually. So I like, if you don't mind, just to pick your brains on that, because I think that would help a lot of people, because it's still difficult to navigate.
So if I said virtual teams 10 years ago, I would have been talking about the scenario that I was in, where I spent some time in an office I had in Finland. I had an office in the south of England. I traveled to an office in Germany, and I had people distributed across the world. So that was a virtual team.
Mm.
I think a virtual team in today's context could be that, but it could also be for people that have one office location, but you have a hybrid working model that people aren't always present.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay if the organization has got the enabling environment to support that. So have you got the right IT environment? Not all roles support hybrid working. There are lots of considerations there, but I mean, what we try to do is to encourage an element of remote working where it's appropriate, where it's possible. And I think we do that with the right balance.
How hard is it to manage, do you think, to actually manage people remotely in terms of that management piece? Because you talk about listening and all that, it's difficult.
Well, I think it goes back to your management style. So you're talking about things like trust, you're talking about effective delegation, you're talking about a system that helps people evidence the results or cooperate in a project environment or team environment effectively. So I think if you can get those things right, then I think it becomes very possible to manage people in a hybrid, remote, or virtual environment.
Yeah, no, it's great advice. And then finally, the opportunities in manufacturing, because there's a lot of challenges as we discussed, but I still think we have so much at our fingertips as an industry and as a region right now. What would you say you're excited about, which could change the business you're in, but also the industry, would you say?
I mean, there are probably I talk to people that want to come and join our organization on a, maybe not a daily basis. We'd be one of your best customers if we were doing that. I think, I talk to people regularly about joining us, and I look at the opportunities that they have. So the opportunity, I think, of coming to work and helping to make people and workplaces safer through fire prevention is a massive opportunity. It's ongoing. We see risks from battery technology in the recycling market, and we have to play a role to help support, keep people safe. So that's a massive opportunity. I think another example is, so we are just about to pack our boxes in our van to go to the NEC and launch a very exciting new product that helps the furniture industry measure and deal with product quality and solve manufacturing challenges. And that's a massive opportunity for the door manufacturers of the UK, the kitchen and cabinet makers in the UK, and I'm super excited about the opportunity to bring that technology to the UK manufacturing community in the next couple of weeks.
Excellent. It's and look, thank you so much for this. I always like to reflect, and I think, for me, you're someone who, when you talk, you're passionate about what you do. The way you communicate is so clear and concise, and I can tell as a leader, you'll be someone who will give clear instruction. I think there'll be a lot of people listening. They'll take inspiration from it, but they'll probably give them, like me, a bit of a kick to go, right. I just need to assess how I manage certain things, and am I as clear? Am I as concise? And I think that everything you mentioned there, I think is so important, and also the big piece around retention, but particularly training, because I think that is one of the missing pieces in most companies, that they just don't see what's in front of them. They're always looking for the next best thing, but often they've got those people already in the business. They just need to give them that ability to grow and learn from each other. So superb. I really appreciate it. So thank you very much, Jonathan. This has been tremendous.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for listening to that episode of the Manufacturing Leaders Podcast. Please just click that subscribe button there. It means the world to me. Even better if you wouldn't mind sharing that and commenting and send to other people. We're really working on growing the channel. So thank you so much for that. As a business, obviously, as I said right at the start, I own a business called Theo James Recruitment. We are a key consultancy and partner to many manufacturing and engineering firms, predominantly across the northeast of England. I am, and my staff are, passionate about delivering a key service and being a partner and understanding the importance of a partnership, whether that's helping out in the recruitment piece, anywhere from blue collar, semi-skilled, right the way up to C-suite level executive, the retention piece, the training piece, how important marketing is now and really sort of helping you market your business and doing that for you and really helping you grow as a business. So please let me know if there's anything we can help with. We run events. Please let me know if you're interested in coming along to those. If indeed you fancy being or know someone who could be a guest on the show, please be in touch. So thank you so much for that. Speak soon. Take care.